Good morning, everybody here in the room in Berlin, and good morning, world, somewhere on Earth, dialing in to this first truly hybrid pdfToolbox launch event, and also to the first pdfToolbox 14 launch event. Rocket is about to start with new ink amount check properties. Somewhat complicated topic, so we immediately go into terms here. The ink amount properties are check properties, allow you to determine the ink that is used on a page, and we introduced in pdfToolbox 13 a new one for a new ability to limit the area that you're checking. And these are the ones that you already have in pdfToolbox 13. And whenever we implement something new, I always think, so now we are done. And then the very next day, somebody shows up saying, okay, I want this to work slightly different. So, and actually we have two new check properties in pdfToolbox 14. And in order to understand what they are doing, I think it's good to first understand what we already have. Yeah? All of them work very similar. Internally, the page that you're looking at is being rendered, converted into a number of pixels, and then the pixels are analyzed and you get a hit according to whatever you have asked for. And then you could, in pdfToolbox 13, already ask for effective ink coverage, and that would allow you to find whether there is an area on the page where you have too much ink. You could also use it in other ways, but that is the most important use case. So you want to determine whether the page potentially has issues when being printed because there is too much ink in an area. And then you could use effective ink coverage for separated plates in order to find out, mostly you will use that to find out whether an ink, whether a colorant, whether a separation, a plate is actually used. So whether there actually is a certain amount of ink in spot color X. Then you can identify the effective number of non-empty plates, which goes into the same direction. And the last one, for registration color, allows you to find whether there effectively is registration color in your print area. So that is what is there, and then there is a helper thing that allows you to limit the area. For instance, for registration color, you would want to limit that to the trim box. So, and then there are two new things, and both, the first one is area effectively covered by ink amount above threshold. The name alone deserves some explanation, I believe. And the other one is effective total area coverage. So let's have a look what they are doing. The first one, area effectively covered by ink amount above threshold. That really explains what it does. The purpose of it is you can find pages where you only have very small areas where color is used, or no areas at all. Yeah? And the use case really here is give me or show me all pages where there is a decent amount or a decent area that is using color. Yeah? Because in a digital printing device, you may say, I want to print that page black and white only because that saves me some money, although there is a little bit of color on that page. But I want to ignore that because otherwise it would be too expensive. Yeah? And then you can say, if the area is, let's say, bigger than 1 square meter that uses color, then only then this page should be printed in color. That is the use case here. And the other new property is effective total area coverage. and that would find pages where the total amount of ink is above threshold. So it's easier to explain what it does. It finds pages where the total amount of ink is above threshold, as I've said. So let's compare the two, because that is always, that I think is also explaining something. The area effectively covered by ink amount, the first one, there I'm really interested in the area, and I don't care whether there is just one ink. I don't care whether it's using 50% of, let's say, cyan or 60%. So I'm just interested in the area. So it ignores the number of inks in that area. It ignores the percentage of color in that area if the percentage is above threshold. So you could say, okay, I'm ignoring everything that is below 6% anyway, but if it's above 6%, it doesn't matter whether it's 10, 20, or 100%. It's just the area that you're taking into account. The other one is different. The other one would get you the total of ink. So if in that area is cyan and magenta, 100%, then you would get the size of the area 200. So it would give you 200%. It would total the inks, and it would also take the ink amount in the color you're looking at into account. So, and that means in the first case you can only get 200%, for the area effectively covered. You can never have more than 100% of the page being filled by color. For the second one, you can get up to the number of colorants that you have by 100%. So for CMYK, you can get up to 400%, which would be a strange page, but in theory, at least that is possible. Okay? Important for the ones who need that. Some additional remarks. So of course, both properties allow you to ignore inks. So if you say, I want to ignore registration color or black or whatsoever, you can say so, which obviously makes sense for area effectively covered by ink amount above threshold. So you will usually want to ignore black there. And then the other thing that is important to understand, if you would use them, because both are calculating areas, and areas are difficult to calculate by means of rendering, because if you're looking at this slide here, it is using lots of text, and text is just small vector graphic, if you want. So, and in order to accurately determine the area that is covered by ink on that page requires a pretty high resolution. You can only determine that if you're using a pretty high resolution, and a pretty high rendering resolution always comes with a downside. It takes time. And that means if you want to use the properties, you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision whether you really need the area that you're interested in. So if you really need to be very accurate here, you would say, okay, I really need to know whether that is 1 square millimeter or 2 or a square centimeter. Then you would have to use very high resolutions, which means very small sample sizes in the terms of the property. So you would have to use sample size, the second bullet here, of 0.1 point, so very small, and you will definitely see that in the performance. So it has an impact. If you just say, okay, I just need to understand an average, whether the limits are hit or not, then you could get away with slightly slower, higher sample size, lower resolution, better performance, but then the numbers would be accurate.
So if you look at how JPEG compression works for images, when you create a JPEG, you will normally specify some kind of quality level, and that might be by setting a percentage, or it may be that you have only choices like small, slightly bigger, really big. But at the end, someone calculates or sets a quality level and does compression, more or less compression to that effect. That compression level or the quality of the resulting image is not stored in the JPEG. It is information that is decided upon when the JPEG is created, but the settings that were used are not stored in the JPEG itself. However, sometimes it helps to know what the quality level is, because it could, for example, allow you to say, oh, if my image was already very highly compressed, then maybe I want to do something different, because I know that every time I recompress a JPEG image, the quality of that image is going to deteriorate. That's how it works. Yeah? And so it would sometimes be useful to have an idea of what the quality level is. And in pdfToolbox 14, there is a new property called JPEG quality level, and that looks at that JPEG image and tries to, I guess is an ugly word, but that's what it is in essence. It tries to guess, it tries to derive, that sounds much more mathematical. It tries to derive what the quality factor of that JPEG image is, and that is what you get. It's not always possible. It is not guaranteed to be exact, because it is something that is derived from the limited information that you have in that image. But in some cases, it can help you to then determine what you want to do with that image. One other small thing, something that I found really annoying and has now been fixed, is that if you ever create imposition configurations, if not, then you probably should look at that part of pdfToolbox, because it's a very powerful part of pdfToolbox, especially with the new JavaScript-based imposition that was introduced in pdfToolbox 13, if I'm not mistaken. If you've used the imposition configuration, then you know that the first step is usually to create it, and then the switchboard is very easy to do that and to test that, because it allows you very quickly to go back and forth between things. But at some point, you have to create an action if you want to run it in a process plan. Yeah? And in pdfToolbox 13, you had to create the action. If you later wanted to modify the imposition, you could not do that modification directly in the action editor. So you had to close the action editor, go back to the switchboard, do your edits, and then you could test your process plan again. That has now been fixed, and you can, from the action editor where you say impose and you select the configurations, you could create a new imposition configuration straight from there. I would not advise that. You do need some testing most of the time, but you could do it. You can duplicate an existing one, or you can edit one that is there and quickly fix something in the action editor itself.
Map colors with more power. That is yet another one that is a little bit complicated. So it's good that you maybe are still fresh. Map colors is a fix-up that we used to have for some time now in pdfToolbox. And that comes with two extensions to adjustments. First, up until pdfToolbox 14, you can specify a tolerance, but the tolerance for the colorant is always the same for all input colorants, which are always CMYK or gray or RGB. Yeah? So the input color space that you're using is CMYK, RGB, or gray, and then you can specify a tolerance. And up until today, the tolerance that you're using is always the same for all colorants. In pdfToolbox 14, as you can see, you have 4 input values, and then you can specify a tolerance per colorant, which means, for instance, use case, I want to specify an input color, but I want to ignore black. So it doesn't matter what value is used in black. I'm only interested in values used for cyan, magenta, or yellow. Yeah, that would be a use case. Of course, if you have an existing fix-up that is based on map colors and that, of course, only uses one tolerance, the engine will internally translate that into something where the tolerance is the same in all 4 colorants. Yeah, as I've said, this is also somewhat complex, probably not important to everybody, but I wanted to mention it. If you are using the feature include intermediate color values, so the feature is there for quite some time, and that basically allows you to specify a combination of, let's say, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and then the same proportion between these colorants, either in a lighter towards 0 or in the darker areas, is also taken into account. Yeah? So 10, 20, 30, 40, and 20, 40, 60, 80 are on that level, if that explains anything. But anyway, if you now have, and then for a tolerance, you had to, what does that mean for a tolerance if you have your line, and we have that indicated here with the red line in the middle. So everything that would be on that red line would then be converted. And then you have a tolerance, and then it's not fully clear what that means for the tolerance. Yeah? Does the tolerance always be the same all over that line, or does it change? And the graphic here, the diagram, actually, I think it explains it very well. It works so that the tolerance is being reduced towards the more lighter values, and is kept the same towards 100%. I hope that becomes clear. It's probably not so important for the most of you, but I still wanted to mention that we had to change the algorithm. It worked differently before, yeah? So it just worked differently before. If you are using the fix-up, and if you are using rather high tolerances, you might see different results. I'm not sure whether anybody on Earth even does so, but I wanted to mention. Anyway, the other new thing that is new to map colors is there is a new input value. You can keep the color value from input, which should explain what it does. So let's use our example again. We only take cyan, magenta, yellow into account. We could then say it doesn't really matter what black is, but I want black to stay, to keep the value that it has in the input. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what black is, but the black should stay where it is. Yeah, and then you can say that. You can say, okay, keep black with the input values, but change cyan, magenta, and yellow. That is possible, and obviously that isn't possible if you do a color space change. So if the original uses RGB and the result would use CMYK, then of course there is nothing that you can keep. Yeah? And then just to show that this can do nice things, so we just found out during implementation and first test, you can really do nice things here. This is a song on a rather bad scan, and then what we just did is we converted everything that is dark gray into black and everything that is light gray into some light gray, and then you can read it much better and easier, and if you're able to play it, you can better play it. I think it's Michael Jackson. Then next feature. Replace text. This took some development time. It's a new switchboard thing. It has been asked for quite some time. It's now possible in pdfToolbox to change text in a PDF file. Yeah, and I guess that is something I wanted to demonstrate. So we see the new pdfToolbox here. We open a test file. This is a real switchboard, and behind there is a switchboard from the screenshot. It's not a screenshot, it's a real PDF file. And as you may see, there are some issues. So it actually wasn't introduced in pdfToolbox 13. So we want to search for 13 and want to replace that with 14 maybe. So we do that. And then it creates a new file here. Yeah, so it has created a new file and it has changed the 13 to 14. I could have limited that to this area only if I would want to. So I could also specify an area on the page, but that is not needed here. I could also use regex in order to not just find the 13, but whatever you can search pattern you can specify with regex, and can also specify the alignment in the text area that has been found by pdfToolbox. You can align to left, right, centered, or justified. And just to do something more, there's another problem here. Yeah, fonts. Yeah, I should mention that before. Fonts are an issue here. Yeah. Quite often in a PDF file, you wouldn't have the fully embedded font, you would only have a subset. Yeah, and if my embedded font wouldn't have had a 4, yeah, because a 4 wasn't used before on that page, then it would be impossible to change the 3, to exchange the 3 with a 4, because there is no 4 in the embedded file, yeah, in the embedded font file. What pdfToolbox would then do, it would try to search system folders. So if it can find the font, it probably has done so, because I probably had a subset here. It has searched system folders and got the 4 from there and embedded that font in addition to the existing font and did that. And then we're getting to here. If no suitable font is available, then you get an error. So, and obviously here is some problem in just in the text. So we want to exchange is available with is not available, because that is how it works. Yeah. Back to slides. Yeah, so as you know, as always, pdfToolbox is not so much an interactive program. Most of our users are interested in automation only, and therefore this is not a switchboard only feature. This also is a quick fix. Yeah, so you could do the very same thing using a quick fix. We have basically the same parameters as in the switchboard. The switchboard is slightly easier to use, so we have removed some of the parameters, which are a page selector. So in the quick fix, you can say, okay, only take even pages into account, only take the first 2 pages into account whatsoever. You can specify an area on the page. You can do so on the switchboard with a mouse selection, but in automation that would be rather difficult, so you can specify the area here. And more importantly, you can specify whether you want to search system folders or whether you want to use a font search path. Yeah? So if you say, okay, for this kind of PDF file, I have a customer folder where the customer fonts are, then you could use that as a search path. Yeah? And then, of course, for the next job, you can use variables, and then you use a different path for the other customer. Yeah, and then one slide from the tips and tricks section, tips and tricks teams. We've also introduced that in the test mode. So if you are working with a file and that doesn't behave according to your expectations, you should understand PDF is not a Word file. So the text may show up, may come out of the engine different as you would expect it to be. So for instance, you don't have line breaks in a PDF file. So text is quite often positioned absolutely, and that means sometimes even a white space is not properly recognized sometimes. The engine works quite well here, but there could be issues. So if you want to find out what text is really extracted, of course pdfToolbox needs first to extract text in order to find whether your search pattern shows up, and then pdfToolbox makes this intermediate result, the extracted text, available to you in test mode. In test mode, you can click the check mark search text, and then you will see in the result an additional thing here, additional button, and if you click on that button, it shows you the text as it has been extracted by pdfToolbox. And that is sometimes helpful in order to set something up.
There is a question regarding replace text. So does replace text reflow text to a new line if the replacing text is larger than the replace text?
No, it does not. That would be really difficult because, you would have to do many calculations. No, that is at least currently not the case. So it only can replace text within the line.
Okay, so if you think my presentation about JavaScript this afternoon is going to be complex, I assure you it's easier than the color stuff Dietrich just went through. A very small one here. I can see that we already are running out of time. Small one, but again, a very useful one. One of the things that was missing in pdfToolbox 13 was the ability to delete imposition configurations, which having some OCD I found very annoying. That is now there, so you can delete the things that you mistakenly create as well. There were ways to get rid of them, but this makes it a little bit easier there as well.